The first one was know how to run a business for profit, right? Mm-hmm. And now recognize that it's your obligation as the leader not just to think short term, but to think long term. And the third, all equally as important, is it's about the employees. Right? Now you got to be smart. You got to have the right business plan in place and strategy so you can beat your competition. Right? So outsmart your competition. But it's really in nearly all businesses, I guess, except maybe some high tech businesses where it's more patent related. You got to have a great team and spend time on developing the team. Spend a lot of time on picking talent, choosing talent, developing talent. Have a diverse set of talents on your team. And so it's classic. If you hire someone smarter than yourself, it's just going to make you look good. If you worry about hiring someone who's smarter than you and you're fearful of, well, that's not a good attitude to take. But having a good team, sort of everybody wins, you know.
Welcome to the Break Free Podcast. I am your host, David Mancilla. Today we have with us Thomas Boso. Tom, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, David. Good to be with you.
Tom, for the audience, can you tell me your full name? Where do you live? That I'm a little bit jealous out right now. Mm-hmm. And what do you do for a living?
Yeah, sure. Tom Boso. I'm the CEO of Homeboy Industries. I live in the Los Angeles area, and now actually I'm on vacation in Hawaii.
Well, even living in LA is something amazing. How long have you been in Hawaii? And by the way, thank you for taking time off vacations to do this podcast. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, it's good to be with you. Always happy to talk about Homeboy. I've been in Hawaii for a little over a week and a half. We come here often. It's my time to recharge and to get straight with what I want to think about and do and move forward. So it's always great to be here.
How long is the flight?
Oh, that's the beauty about Los Angeles. It's only a 5-hour from Los Angeles to Hawaii. It's only a 5-hour flight. So it's easily achievable. I think back to my corporate days when I lived in LA and the corporate headquarters were in Philadelphia, and I had to fly 5 hours just for a 2-hour meeting and get back on the plane and fly back home. So this is something much different.
That's great. Yeah, last time I went to Hawaii was in 2019, and I live in Toronto, so I had to fly 4 or 5 hours to Vancouver, change planes, another 5 hours to Hawaii.
Right.
Thomas, tell me a little bit more about the organization you're working at right now. What do you guys do, and how long have you been there?
Sure. So Homeboy Industries, we're a nonprofit based in Los Angeles, California. It's been around for 35 years. It started by a Jesuit priest named Father Greg Boyle, and he's still with us and our leader along the way. But Homeboy Industries, what we do is we help folks leave gang life behind. Men and women come out of the prison system, and they have a choice. Do they want to go running back with the gang, or they want to change their life? And when they want to change their life and move it forward, we're there to help them. So 8,000 people come through our doors every year, and unfortunately, Los Angeles is still the gang capital of the country, and thereby the world, and thereby we're the largest gang rehabilitation and reentry program in the country as well. But it's been around for, as I said, 35 years. Amazing success at helping people leave gang life and that life of crime behind.
That is beautiful. How do you landed that job? I mean, like, one thing is working for corporations and making profits and actually changing the environment by providing employment and providing good services to your clients. Another thing is what you're doing is actually you're getting people out of desperation and get them trained as productive citizens. That's beautiful. It must be very fulfilling.
No, without a doubt, very fulfilling. For me, the first part of my 2 chapters of my career. First part is 26 years in the for-profit sector of our economy. I was executive vice president of a $13 billion business. My businesses were $1.8 billion. So I had 18,000 folks working for me. And I love that part of my career. I'm a business guy. I go to conferences even on behalf of Homeboy, and I lead off by saying I'm a committed capitalist. And sometimes a murmur runs across the audience. But for me, well-run companies are good for our society. You know, they provide jobs and quality jobs for people. And so if you do well by shareholders and do well by employees, then you're a good, well-run company. But at some point, though, as I was going up the corporate ladder and did well for myself, those jobs as CEO have a certain shelf life. And at the same time, I realized, in the end of the day, in the way our systems are set up now, shareholders come before employees. And I've always wondered, can you run a business where shareholders are equal to employees in terms of how it's valued by how you run the organization? And so now about 12 years ago, I decided to leave the corporate world behind. I sort of had enough of that. And a friend of mine invited me down to the Homegirl Cafe, which is in Los Angeles, and to have lunch. And he wanted to get me involved in Homeboy Industries and to be on the board. And so I'm sitting there having lunch in the cafe. Think about it this way, David. So I'm having lunch. All around are the workers of the Homegirl Cafe, and they're doing a great job. They're serving customers, they're smiling, they're interacting with each other. And I'm sitting there realizing that in my for-profit world, I would have never hired any of them because they had tattoos on their face, they had felonies, and they were gang members. And so it really was front and center for me to realize, wow, I'm a big advocate of our system and jobs are good for people. And yet, I see here, Homeboy, in the context of the job, it's helping someone massively move their life forward. And so when my friend asked me to get involved, I had time on my hands. I wasn't going back to the corporate world any longer. And so I said, listen, let me roll up my sleeves and see if I can help in a different way and put my business skills to use. And so I joined Homeboy as a volunteer. And so, and immediately I fell in love with the organization. Look, I started Homeboy at the time when they were going through a financial crunch. And so the founder and the board asked me to come on as CEO. I didn't think I was going to work again, but I took a leap of faith and I said, sure, because I wanted to be in the orbit of Father Greg and see what that was about. But as I said, I love the organization. I had all the hubris of a corporate CEO. I thought, okay, I'd do this for 6 months to a year, help shape them up, help them move forward. And now here I am 11 years later, still a Homeboy and loving what I do.
That's amazing. So what's the business model? Because Homeboy creates businesses, right? Or you guys run your own businesses, or you just place people in other businesses?
Yeah, we do both. So first and foremost, we're a human services organization. So we help gang members leave gang life behind. So all the services you need for that. So we have substance abuse therapy, we have work therapy, we have mental health therapists along the way. We take off 12,000 tattoos off of people. We have anger management classes, GED class. And so all those reentry services that we do. And then we understand that jobs provide a good structure. And so we have social enterprise businesses as well. So we have a bakery, we have a cafe, we have an electronics recycling company, and we have about 7 businesses in total. So those jobs provide structure. So while people work on themselves, you can't work on yourself all day long. The job provides that structure. So we have our businesses as training programs. And then after people are with us for 18 months, then we give them a job either permanent in our businesses or in family-friendly employers.
That is beautiful. Now, those 7 businesses create profits and you turn back the profits into its own business or to help to the other ministries inside, or how does it work?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of all that. We're right now, we're about a $40 million organization. So I'm quick to say we raise 40 million, we spend 40 million. Of that, we raise $25 million a year from donors. About 10 million comes from business revenue and a little about 5 million comes from government. And so we could run our businesses for profit, but right now we run our businesses as training programs. And so we run them like a for-profit business, except for the labor line. We carry 2 to 3 times as much labor as a comparable for-profit business because we want to provide the opportunities for people to learn how to work. Listen, 90% of our folks have never worked a day in the life at a formal business. And so it's kind of, I say this as a side, it's kind of silly for our society to think they can release tens of thousands of prisoners a year out of the prison system and think they're going to make it in our society without ever having work experience or be able to have the resiliency to maintain a job. So what Homeboy is that important middle step to help people heal from their trauma, become resilient enough to take on the workforce.
That's beautiful. And you know, I love how you were mentioning that you're a capitalist. I am too. And at some point in my life, when I was exploring different models, you know, I was looking at the socialist system and the communist system, and it sounds good in paper. But when you actually implement that in reality, it's a total collapse of the economy and a total collapse of freedom. Sure. And after doing my investigations throughout the years, I realized that capitalism and the free world is not a perfect system.
Nope.
But the free economy is the most accurate system if you want to grow and provide value and provide opportunities to people. Because this is what happens, right? Like, let's go to a country like Cuba, for example, or like Venezuela. Venezuela has more oil than Qatar does.
You
know that?
Wow. No, I did not know that.
Qatar, my sister lived in Qatar for 8 years because she was sent there to open the psychology department for one of their universities. She's a doctor in psychology. So she lived there about 10 years. And she shared with me that the average salary in Qatar is $100,000 per person.
Oof.
Because they have so much money from the oil production and they manage it so well under free, under capitalism. I mean, they have a dictatorship, but they have capitalism underneath. They have a free economy. Now let's look at Venezuela. More than 5 million people have left that country in the last 5 years.
My gosh.
And the country is in ruins. And they have more oil than
than Qatar. Wow, that's bad. I know. Listen, I'm with you, and look, again, I'm a vocal capitalist, and it's not perfect, as you said, but it can make a difference. And overall, our society is in much better shape the way it is structured. The thing I also recognize is, you know, since I believe in business so much. You know, the thing I've seen at Homeboy over these last 10 years, and in many ways, I think about this, but there's two Americas here, right? There's the folks for me who did pretty well, and generally everybody. Then there's the America of the poor, the demonized and the forgotten, and how hard it is to do well if you come out of a poor strata. And so also what I realized is that Homeboy has a way of helping people and lift people out of poverty. And so I think about that a lot. Listen, the poverty rate in America has been the same for 45 years, same narrow band, same 12 to 13%. And so we haven't, as a system, we haven't figured this out. But I'm sitting there seeing how Homeboy has actually helped people, and not just help them heal from their trauma, but help them become employable and then become contributing members of our society. And so in many ways, you know, I wrote the book, The Homeboy Way. What I've tried to do is get the message out there to other businesses that, listen, let's hire the working poor. Because if we create quality jobs, that's the way to get people out of poverty, is to get them a good job. And to get them, but part of it is more than just hiring the working poor, it's actually providing the support services around to help them move their life forward.
For sure, but it makes so much sense. The problem is that, especially this new generation, you know, like, they haven't suffered what we have suffered to make sure that freedom stays. And they demand things from the government because they just don't want to work. So when you have a level of laziness in your lifestyle and you expect that the government will actually do everything for you, you are calling for communism. And when you call for communism, you have no idea what you're wishing for. So, you know, I wish I had this amazing spaceship where I could put everybody that is complaining about the free economy and take them to Cuba, take them to Venezuela, you know, take them to North Korea, you know. Right. And some people tell me, but China is communist. China is not communist. I think California is more communist than China. It's a dictatorship with a capitalist system underneath.
Yeah, no, I hear you. But listen, let me also say, so well, I can agree with you in a lot of areas there. I want to importantly point out, and a lot of my friends, my business friends and all, ask me about the work of Homeboy, but really how, you know, the news of the day and how the homies kind of react to it, right? And my glib way of response is, listen, our folks are too busy being poor to be kind of focused on these other issues. So you find very few of our people talking about whether it's communism, socialism, or capitalism, but they're struggling to get by every day. And so, and that's kind of the light I want to shine on this, is that there's, so many of our people still need our help. And we have resources as our society, we should be able to help them and help move their life forward.
And another thing that I find amazing with your organization is that most people look at criminals like, we just discard them as garbage and they're unusable humans. They are humans. We all make mistakes. And if you give a person the chance to recover and to heal their wounds, I know they're going to be productive, right? That forgiveness, right? That society needs to have.
That's right. That's right. If I take a minute to tell you a story along those lines. So when I first joined Homeboy, there's so much I had to learn about what the mission was and how we did the mission. So I did a lot of what's called management by walking around and going to chat with people. And so early on, I was walking through our bakery, and like I said, we have a artisan bakery, and look, there's nothing better. Artisan bakery means hand rolled breads and doughs and all that, right? There's nothing better than breaking down barriers and having two rival gang members be shoulder to shoulder rolling dough all day, and they have to get a certain amount of bread baked, right? And so you can't demonize somebody in relationship with, and you need to start trusting your workmate there along the way. So that's why we have a bakery. We have bread routes, and we also go to farmers markets. And so we go to 26 farmers markets around Los Angeles County. And I remember walking through the bakery one morning and heard one of our best farmers market guys, George, talking to the bakery manager, asking for the weekend off. And, that's a big deal because that's when most of the farmers markets are on the weekends. And so, our manager said yes. And then I, went up to George just to chat and just say, hey, what are you doing? You going away? Type of thing, without really thinking how I was saying it. And then I heard him say, he said to me, no, he's reporting in. I said, reporting in? What's that mean? He said, well, I'm reporting to county jail. I said, well, why are you reporting to county jail? And he said, well, I owe a lot of money and I'm going to go to jail, have that time, earn off money. And so at that time, still at the time, people come out of the jail system in debt, not just from restitution charges, but court costs, parole officer costs, all sorts of fines and fees. And so it's, again, nutty that our society thinks that a prisoner is going to earn money somewhere so that when they come out of jail, they can pay off their debt. And so George is trying to do it the right way, which is to your point. Right? People want to work hard and do it the right way. George could have gone to his fellow gang members and asked for money to pay off his debt, but he didn't want to be indebted to them, so he didn't do that. He could have gone to borrow money at a high interest rate. He didn't do that at all. He did it the honest way possible for him at that point was to report into county jail for 4 days and earn off some of that money he owed. So again, I knew nothing about all this. So I walked away from that conversation super impressed that, boy, he's doing it the right way. He chose not to do it the wrong way. He's doing it the right way. But yet society throws up these barriers. All right. So I was thinking about it all weekend. I was wondering, well, maybe I should have just reached in my pocket and given him money. It's like all those things you think through afterwards. So on Tuesday, I make a beeline to go see him. And I say, George, how'd it go? And I can see the stress on his face. And now George had just come out of prison months earlier. And unusually, he was able to get custody of his two children, 10-year-old and an 8-year-old. And again, he has no family support, and he didn't have his homies to help him. And the caregiver who was going to come watch his children couldn't come watch. They, at last minute, canceled. But he still had to report into county jail. So he left his 10-year-old, 8-year-old home alone in the apartment for 4 days. Now, so the punchline is they turned out it was okay. Nothing happened to him, right? But can you imagine the stress leaving your children home alone, 8-year-old and 10-year-old? And I tell you that story for a couple of things. One is look at all the challenges that someone who's trying to do right in our society has thrown up against them. And the other thing is to realize is let's not judge him, because, constantly what I went through my mind is, oh my gosh, I would have never done that. Why'd you do that? And he's like, in my mind, I'm like questioning and judging at the time, and realizing until you get into the situations, it's impossible to figure out what the right way to do, what to do. Like, just like the homegirl who works in our merchandise store, one of the other homies came up to me and said, hey, you might want to check this out. She's not eating breakfast or lunch. And so we went to find out why. Because she didn't have enough money for diapers for her newborn baby. So she was saving money and not eating. It's like, oh my gosh, in society, really, we can't get diapers to people who are poor? And so I say that to say, folks want to do it the right and honest and good way in the dignity of a job. It just, sometimes society throws up so many hurdles that makes it compounding so hard for them to do.
It's crazy. And also, we must realize that if you look at somebody that has, severe misbehavior, you have to investigate where that comes from. And I bet 99% of the time, it comes from wounds that they had when they were kids. And if you
very much so.
Parents, it's a generational curse, right?
Right. Yeah, right, very much so. I mean, the folks we work with are multi-generational gang members. They've been jumped in a gang when they were young, when they were teenagers. The parents told them not to go to school. They would never amount to anything. Most didn't finish the 10th grade. They were jumped into a gang, which causes trauma in itself. They think the gang is their family they never had. That's a false hope. They've come to learn the gang was not there for them when they needed them. And so they're traumatic. And so all our folks, you said 99%, I say 100%, are all victims of complex trauma. And then, painful people transmit pain, right? Hurt other people. And so then they hurt other people. So it's only when they come full circle and realize that they got to heal from their pain that they can move their life forward. And that's really what we do, is help people heal from their trauma in a positive, compassionate way.
What is the role of forgiveness around the therapy that you guys provide to help them out of their problems?
Yeah. There's two ways, man. So we're all about forgiveness. We're all about, let me say this, it's all about non-judgment. If someone walks through our doors, we don't judge them for their color of their skin, the tattoos on their face, the gang member, their felon. We just help them where they're at today and do something positive to help them move forward. Say yes in some type of way, because all their life they've been told no. And so then it's about teaching them, or being in an environment where there's positive relationships are formed, because they've never really had a positive relationship. And so once that positivity starts kicking in, they start getting more confidence. Then when they start loving themselves, and to me, I'll put it in my words, they start loving themselves when they realize God loves them no matter what, which is a lot of what is said at Homeboy. And once they start realizing God loves them no matter what, they can start loving themselves, and then they start forgiving themselves and forgiving people around them of the trauma that they've experienced.
It's incredible, Tom. Yesterday, I created another channel recently. It's only been a couple of months. It's a channel that just inspires people to become better persons with scriptures, right? I'm a born-again Christian. I was raised Catholic, and so I love the Lord. And I was talking yesterday about forgiveness. Mark 11:25 says, you need to forgive everybody that has hurt you in the past so that the Lord can forgive you. But if you look at the instruction, the forgiveness heals your heart. When you forgive, when you actually go back and you realize, okay, I was beaten up when I was a kid. They did this to me. They did that to me when I was just a little kid, and I didn't deserve that. And you grow up with that bitterness that turns into violence. And then you start doing the same thing to others. But when you start realizing that the power is in forgiving the people that hurt you, that's when everything starts healing and everything starts flourishing in your heart again. Right?
Yeah. No, that's right. And we see that every day at Homeboy, and people use that language. We don't have a religious class, a Bible class, anything like that. But people use that spiritual language and how they move their life forward. And we encourage all of you we have a morning meeting where we get together in a space, and we have this on YouTube, so everybody gets to see it, where we do announcements, classes, sort of recognize when people are off parole or they got their driver's license, and we sing happy birthday to somebody. Really, sometimes it's the first time they've been saying happy birthday to in their life, right? And so it creates a good sort of ethos and energy in the environment. And then we also have a thought of the day, and it's a rotating thought of the day. And oftentimes we have our homies do the thought of the day, and forgiveness is a common theme. And it's when they truly learn to forgive those around them, that really moves them forward measurably. And so let me end by saying this part. If I think about this often, if our folks who have been victims of complex trauma, who've done awful things, if they can forgive those around them, then I should be able to forgive people around me. It's my bar is much lower. So along the way, right?
It's crazy, but it affects us the same way, Tom, right? If we live, if we allow unforgiveness to eat away our souls, before you know, you're a bitter person.
That's right.
You are not happy. You're always thinking in defense mode, thinking that the next person is going to come and hurt you.
That's right.
I experienced that until I had to let go. My wife experienced that with me too, until she had to let go, and she had to forgive me a whole bunch of things. But we're still married. We've been married for 34 years now, and 3 kids, 2 grandkids, but it's been only the power of forgiveness.
Totally agree. And I would never have used those words back in my first chapter of my career, my corporate life. So it's something I learned in this chapter of being a nonprofit guy.
That's wonderful. Now tell me, when you're a for-profit business, you run things a little different, right? Because you need to make that revenue. You need to actually respond to the shareholders and to the employees with raises and all that. How is different from managing that to managing a non-for-profit?
Yeah, I would say there's more similar than dissimilar. That, like, it's any organization. It's like, what is the strategy? What's your vision? What's your mission statement? What's your strategy? What are your tactics? And do you have the right people in the right jobs? Right now, so those are all the same, and what it takes to be successful at that is all the same. Biggest difference, though, in a nonprofit, particularly a human services nonprofit, is I think the work environment. So our folks, our frontline leaders, we help people leave gang life behind, right? They come in, just as we said, broken and in trauma and angry at the world, or when they walk through their doors. So our people, our staff absorbs the pain of our clients. And so there's a lot more need for self-care, being trained on being trauma informed, making sure that sort of people take time off and really put things in perspective. So being part of a mission-based organization, people lock in more, and it's more emotional, and so you got to really think through making sure people don't burn out and are there for the long term. But otherwise, a lot of the other stuff is pretty similar, and it's do you have the right people in the right jobs? Can you lead the team? Do you have the right leadership team for the future, which is what any organization thinks about.
What do you have to do to turn things around when you got there? Because they were in a financial crunch, right?
Yeah, they were in a financial crunch. At the time, we were about a $10 million organization, losing about $3 million a year. Now, I mean, we're like I said, a $40 million organization, and we break even. In many ways, it was this stuff you needed to do. It's like you needed to understand each month, live within your means, right? You needed to get that information out to the whole senior team so they understood what they could do, and making sure you had the right talented people in the job. So a big part of it was, the third item was, particularly on the social enterprise businesses, is that they were to have them under the business managers to know they had to wear 2 hats. They had to manage the P&L like a for-profit business, except for the labor line. And they had to understand the mission to make a trauma-informed workplace. But they couldn't overly depend upon the mission and thereby not hold people to do their jobs. And that was a big part of it. So getting people to realize that we all wear 2 hats was a major part of it. And then that's big number one. Big number two is go find money and getting out there, knocking on doors, asking for more donors to come and help us, because we're blessed with generous donors, and thank goodness, because we wouldn't have gotten this far without them. But it's really articulating what we do and showing them that we help people, and we're really effective at it.
That is fun. That is fantastic. Now, how did you get to be so successful? What's the secret of your success? How did you start in business anyway? You went to college to get a business degree or something?
No. Listen, I was a math guy, mathematics major. I went to then I got my master's degree in applied mathematics, and in graduate school I ran across a professor who kind of let me see how we can apply mathematics to the outside world, to the business world. And so then from there I said, okay, I want to see if I can use my analytical brain in business a little differently. And I started at a catalog mail order company back in the 80s. So remember back how cataloging was the thing. Now it's all online e-commerce, right? But back then it was like think about it. It's you measured how many catalogs you mailed out, how many orders got back in, and if you were smart about your analytics, you knew who to mail to next time. And but then I found I had an affinity for understanding business early on. I had a business mentor, who said to me, Tom, he saw me as a high potential up and comer. He said, but you got to, be really good at understanding how to make money at a company. So whether in any business, whether it's how to drive sales, how to manage cost, how to lead your team, how to be entrepreneurial. If you know what the levers of a P&L are and how to work that, you'll be successful. And I understood that. And so as our company was acquired by a big corporation, Aramark, then I just sort of went up that corporate ladder and kept doing well for myself. And it's about leadership. And I got to say, I'm very fortunate to be part of the corporation I was. It was about, they invested a lot of time and effort into making me a better leader and manager. And because it was a managed service company. So we had no special technologies or patents. So it was a business that sort of picked up dirty laundry, swept floors, and served hot dogs at stadiums. So it was very low tech in that sense. But it's a decentralized management team. So if you developed your management team well, and they knew the mission, they knew how to get the job done, you begot further business. And so I was invested in my whole career in terms of learning things. And I try to bring that now to the nonprofit world, of trying to get those same type of firms who helped me in the for-profit world to donate their time and help our nonprofit leaders. And it's been really helpful, because now we have a management team who can take Homeboy into the future and beyond.
That's beautiful. If somebody is listening to this and they want to move their careers ahead and they want to become a leader sometime, eventually become a CEO of a corporation, what advice would you give them? Yeah,
it's a couple of things. The first one was know how to run a business for profit, right? Mm-hmm. And now recognize that it's your obligation as the leader, not just to think short term, but to think long term. And the third, all equally as important, is it's about the employees. Right? Now, you got to be smart. You got to have the right business plan in place and strategy so you can beat your competition, right? So outsmart your competition. But it's really in nearly all businesses, I guess, except maybe some high-tech businesses where it's more patent related. You got to have a great team and spend time on developing the team, spend a lot of time on picking talent, choosing talent, developing talent, have a diverse set of talents on your team. And so it's classic. If you hire someone smarter than yourself, it's just going to make you look good. If you worry about hiring someone who's smarter than you and you're fearful of, well, that's not a good attitude to take. But having a good team, sort of everybody wins. High tide raises all boats along the way. And then the last item, it's a little bit, not so much in the corporate world, but if you're going in the nonprofit world, if you want to do both, take that leap of faith. I feel so fortunate and grateful that something pushed me to take that leap of faith. And now this chapter of my career has just been wonderful.
It was wonderful. Thomas, but to do that, to hire people smarter than you, it requires a level of humbleness, right?
Mhm.
Problem is when you get proud, you think you're the smartest, you think you know it all, right? And you on purpose or unconsciously start hiring people that are underperformers compared
That's
to
right.
your own ability. And then everything goes down spiral, right? Because nothing
No,
works.
for sure. I mean, humility is a key aspect of it, and it's odd because it's in our society where you know, you look at CEOs and some are brash and some have charisma, but I think the really successful ones are actually humble along the way, and they realize they got to have a good team underneath them to be there. Just as you say, you got to be humble.
Yeah, it happened to me. You know, I started very humble in my career. You know, I've been an entrepreneur for over 18 years now. But at some time when I started making money, I got really proud and I thought it was myself.
Mm-hmm.
And little did I know it was my team. So at the beginning of my pride was also the beginning of my demise. And I almost went bankrupt to learn the lesson, but I finally got out of it, realizing that I had to go back to humbleness and I have to work for my team. I have to be a servant to my team. As a leader, I have to serve them, serve my team and serve my clients and forget about my own needs, fulfill their needs, and then my needs will be automatically fulfilled.
Right? Exactly right. That's right. It's unfortunate we all sometimes have to make mistakes and do it the wrong way to sort of figure out the right way.
Exactly. Thomas, what has been the worst situation in your business life or non-for-profit life, and how did you come out of it?
You know, I'm going to just keep talking about Homeboy for a minute, the nonprofit life. You know, and it's so unique to Homeboy, right? I mean, we're a human services agency that helps gang members leave gang life behind. A number of years ago, UCLA here in LA did an independently funded study to measure Homeboy's effectiveness, and what it showed was that people who are part of the Homeboy program 2 years later only have a recidivism rate, which means going back into the jail system under a new charge. We only have a recidivism rate of 30%. And that compares favorably to the statewide average of 70%. So we're over 2 times more effective than the state, than what's happening in the state. And listen, we deal with serious violent offenders. And so we're really proud of that. We do a really great job. And so we, you know, offhand say we have a 70% success rate, right? Helping people. But listen, that means we have 30% we haven't been able to reach and help. And that is heartbreaking sometimes when we know the stories when they leave Homeboy and what happens. So the hardest thing, and in particular post-pandemic since 2020, you know, those first year and a half, 18 months after the pandemic hit, the population we serve, really, really difficult situation. You know, 18 people died in those first 18 months, not of COVID, but of gang violence, domestic violence, drug overdoses. You know, when there's a sense of hopelessness out there, things go bad. And, you know, what's one of my interesting, you know, 10 years ago when I started, one of my learnings was I went into Homeboy thinking like a lot of folks, you know, maybe we should have tougher sentencing laws. And if people knew, you know, they're going to have longer stints in prison, maybe they wouldn't do the crime. Well, that's kind of silly. I feel silly even saying that now. Because what happens is when they're 18, 19, 20 years old, they don't think they're going to live past 25. And so that creates the recklessness of behavior. So that hopelessness just creates that recklessness of behavior. And so when COVID came along, again, society had that hopelessness, particularly for the populations we serve. And so really unfortunate things happen. And so the toughest thing, back to your spirit of your question, is that cost of failure at Homeboy is high. Like I felt the pressure. If I don't find the money to keep our doors open, just going to be out there back in the life of crime, running with gangs, it's going to be awful. And so that's the hardest part. I mean, that's been the hardest thing in my whole career, sort of carrying that stress without knowing we had no safety net around us. And then the second part of your question, how do you deal with it, right? I wouldn't give it up. I wouldn't have traded it for anything, because the upside is how we help people, which is pretty, miraculous and pretty special. And to be part of people's transformation is sort of just, it's wonderful. And to see people move their life forward, yeah, it's all in there together. So you got to take the good and the bad.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Thomas. We've been talking for 45 minutes already. I want to be respectful of your vacations. Thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, not a problem.
One last question before we finish the podcast. If you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write in it?
All right, personally, what I would write on it, that God is too busy loving us to be judging us.
If we only understood that, right?
You got to understand it deep down. You got to understand it in your bones, right?
And sometimes it's hard, Tom. That's why I don't watch the news anymore.
Yeah.
Because people blame God for everything, and they don't realize that we have free will.
That's
that
right.
all the disasters that we see in the world is not given by God. God loves everybody. It's our free will that messes everything up and creates these multi-generational curses that turns into violence after violence after violence. But we have that hope that God loves us and gives us other chances. And for every person that you actually set free with your program, you are actually not setting only free that person, you're setting free their children and their children of their children of their children. Because as you have multi-generational courses, you also have multi-generational blessings.
That's right. No,
thank you for that.
Yeah. Oh, can I have a second billboard?
Yeah.
All right, my second billboard is something Father Greg also encourages us to do. And this is what I learned. I mean, I wish I learned this when I was younger, right? That, to encourage us to move, to be in a relationship with people on the margins of our society. And it's about being in a relationship, not about wagging our finger or telling how they can get better, but just being in a relationship with people on the margins of our society. It's beautiful when it happens, and it has taught me a great deal. And if more people did it, I think that we would erase the margins.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Tom. If people would like to donate or participate in your organization somewhere or somehow, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah. We're on the web, homeboyindustries.org. Come to our website. We have a pretty active Facebook page, a lot of YouTube videos, but there's a lot of stories out there, and it's good content. I think people will be impressed. And if you're ever in Los Angeles, come by for a visit.
Beautiful. I'll personally make sure I do that.
Please do.
Tom, thank you so much. God bless, and have a beautiful rest of your vacations.
Right. Thank you, David.
Cheers.
That's all for today's episode of the Break Free Podcast. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Starting your own business can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. Visit davidmansilla.com to pick up a copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail. Expand what you consider to be possible and reach your full potential. And join us on the next episode.